Hey everybody, how are we doing? Welcome back to the show. Good to see so many of you with us at an alternative, at a very different time. We're coming to you live on this stream today. Thank you so much for joining me. Apologies for the change in schedule. I am working today. I'm a little bit all over the place today. I've had to get up nice and early this morning. I've had to head into London to do one bit of work, and obviously I've got my Talksport 2 show coming up between 3 and 5 p.m. today with Kwaku Afari, The Social, which I'm obviously really looking forward to. Now that football's back and we're kind of back in the swing of talking about actual games, I just find it so much more enjoyable. And I'm sure we're going to be talking transfers. I'm sure we're going to be talking Eze and all the rest of it. But it just doesn't make sense. Those of you that know what it's like getting around London will know that it doesn't make sense for me to go all the way back home to record for half an hour, 40 minutes, and then come all the way back down to central London. So I do apologize about any background noise or anything like that. There's not a great deal I can do about it. I know the audio quality is not as good with this headset as it is when I'm using my sort of stand-up microphone, but it is what it is. We've got a lot to get through today. We're going to talk lots and lots about Eberechi Eze, what's going on with that, the latest on that. We're also going to bring you a bit of an update on Kai Havertz, as per some sources in Germany. Mikel Arteta is due to speak a little bit later on today. And we're hoping that we'll get some kind of update from him during that press conference, but we are recording shortly before that. So if you are listening to it after the fact, I won't have the information. I don't have Mikel's comments to be able to kind of react to those, but we can cover those off on tomorrow morning's pod. So yeah, we'll keep you right across that as well, of course, because that is a big story and a big deal, and we're all hoping that he's going to be okay, and that if he is going to be out for a period of time, it isn't going to be as long as first feared. So we'll touch on that, and then of course we're going to preview that game against Leeds United coming up tomorrow evening. It's our first home game of the season. There's always a great buzz and anticipation around the first home game of the season, and add into the equation that we could be rolling out Eberechi Eze in front of everybody as well. It just feels like, yeah, you know, this should be the kind of lift-off point for our season. I know people were talking about the result at Old Trafford and what a fantastic result it was. The performance kind of left a lot to be desired, and because of that, I think there's been maybe a little bit of worry that's kind of crept into the Arsenal supporter base over the course of the last few days, and that is related to the performance and the display, which, as I keep saying, wasn't at the level that we all know that we're capable of. But you can look at it in one of two ways, right? You can frame it up as, you know, didn't play very well, didn't really click, still trying to get to grips with some of our new signings and the changes and adjustments in our game that we need to make to cater for those guys. You can also say that those guys are still working hard to adjust and to adapt to their new surroundings, new teammates, etc. But ultimately, we got the result, and that's what matters. And so that should be seen as a positive, that we can dig deep even when we're not playing particularly well. Or you can look at it and go, well, there was a lot of what we saw last season in terms of that lack of creativity, not being efficient enough in the final third. And so I want Arsenal to prove to me that actually they have improved, and that actually we are going to be better off this season than we were last. Whichever way you want to look at it, ultimately, we all want Arsenal to win and we all want Arsenal to do well. So let's not get into the arguments of what the kind of case was last Sunday. I think we've gone there. We've beaten Man United, a very good sort of result on paper when you think about you know, what our history at Old Trafford is like. Regardless of what you think about United right now, they were up for it. The crowd were up for it. And it's a difficult place to go at any time, at any point, if you are Arsenal Football Club. So we take it on the chin and we move forward and we focus on what we want to see in the game against Leeds United. So that'll kind of be how we build our preview. But let's start with the Eberechi Eze stuff. What is the latest on that? I know everybody's desperate for the announcement, but where are we at the time? Okay, so it's been widely reported that Eberechi Eze is undergoing his Arsenal medical today. Now, we haven't heard at the time of recording that medical has been complete yet. And obviously, for him to feature against Leeds, all of that would have needed to have been done, and he would have needed to be registered by midday. Now it's 5 to 12 right now. So the likelihood that we're going to hear after the fact that actually Arsenal got this all done and dusted and got him all registered ahead of the Leeds United game, it's unlikely. Okay, I don't think you're going to see Eberechi Eze make his Arsenal debut tomorrow against Leeds United, but there's no reason why he can't make his debut against Liverpool next weekend. And what a game that would be to join Arsenal ahead of, right? So it's not going to happen in time, I don't think, but there is a chance that, we get some sort of kind of official confirmation ahead of Leeds. Maybe we even see him in attendance at Emirates Stadium. Maybe he's paraded out on the pitch before kickoff. Who knows? And if he is, as I said, that will give people quite the buzz and just raise those excitement and boost those excitement levels, won't it? So that's where we're at the moment on Eberechi Eze. But I do want to talk a little bit about kind of the way things unfolded last night ahead of Crystal Palace's game against Fredrikstad in the Europa Conference League, because I thought it was all a bit strange, if I'm being honest with you. If you remember sort of when the reports of Arsenal doing a deal first emerged, people were suggesting that he's going to play. He's going to play for Crystal Palace in this crucial Europa Conference League qualifier. And then after that, Crystal Palace will allow the deal to go through and they'll allow it to move forward. And I kept sitting there and thinking to myself, if you are about to make a sale of £68 million, you're Crystal Palace, right? £68 million is a hell of a lot of money. And it's not the kind of money that you can turn your nose up at, that you can snub. You just can't, right? You're Crystal Palace, with all due respect to them, it's a club that I really like and have a soft spot for. You can't afford to jeopardize this deal by risking Eberechi Eze in a game that he could pick up an injury in. Now, people would argue that maybe he would have played and he would have played at 70% and he wouldn't have pushed himself to that level and he wouldn't have got to the point where, he was really in the red and risking injury. But I couldn't make sense of why, as Crystal Palace, you would allow that to. Well, I guess I can see why they would want it. They would want it because they want a greater chance of winning the game, right? But from a kind of bigger picture perspective, like surely Crystal Palace have enough to beat Fredrikstad, and they did in the end, even without Eberechi Eze. And then you kind of got Oliver Glasner coming out before the game. Again, a coach I've got a lot of respect and admiration for. I think he's fantastic. But then you got him saying like, well, yeah, as far as I was aware, Eberechi Eze was going to start the game tonight, and then he phoned me and said he's not well. And you're sitting there and you're going, come on, lads. Like, stop insulting the intelligence of all the Crystal Palace fans. Like, I understand and I appreciate that there's probably some legal reason or there's probably something, that prevents them from coming out and saying, look, this is basically a done deal. You don't want to do that until it's done. You don't want to count your chickens before they hatch, all the rest of it, right? I get all of that stuff. But, like, you could have said, look, as you guys know, there is interest in Eberechi Eze. His future is unclear, even if it is clear. And we've decided that it's best that he's not involved tonight. You don't have to give us the whole he's not well line. I don't think that was meant in the sense of, like, I think it got lost in translation a bit. I don't think it was meant in the sense of, yeah, Eberechi Eze is not well, like he's got a temperature or he's got the runs or anything like that. I don't think that's how it was meant. I think what he was trying to say was that Eberechi Eze had called up and said, look, given the situation, given that, as you know, regardless of what you're saying publicly, I'm very close to joining Arsenal Football Club. I don't feel like I can play tonight and I don't feel like I want to play tonight. Glasner was obviously not massively happy with that. Which I wouldn't expect him to be. He's a manager. He's taken Crystal Palace to an FA Cup win, the first in their history. He's taken them into Europe. He's put them in a really great position. They're starting a European campaign that already has a bit of a downer on it because, they expected to be playing in the conference, in the Europa League, I beg your pardon, rather than the Conference League. Some behind the scenes stuff has dictated that they've been demoted. That will have frustrated the coach for sure. And so, he's not in a very happy place right now, Glasner, and he obviously feels like Crystal Palace, knowing that they could lose Eze, knowing that Mark Gay is probably going to go as well, haven't done anywhere near enough in the transfer market. And I've got sympathy for him. I really do agree with him. And I've said this time and time again. I think when the first big Premier League job becomes available this season, at whatever point that is, you could do a lot worse than Oliver Glasner. And there'll be a lot of clubs, not just in this country, but in other countries too, I believe, that will be looking at him as potentially their next coach, because everywhere he's been really good and really successful. And it's understandable that as a coach, if you feel that the club's ambition doesn't match your own, you're going to feel frustrated. But I just think if I was a Crystal Palace fan and I was watching that last night, like, it would have frustrated me. It would have wound me up. Like, everybody knows he's going to Arsenal. Fans were being interviewed outside the ground talking about it. Steve Parish then comes out after the game and says, sort of, I think the phrase he used to try and be kind of funny was, "The king's dead, long live the king." Like, basically saying that we're going to move forward and we're going to get someone else. We're going to have to move for somebody else to replace him, and that's how it works. Life goes on. Kind of wish him all the best. He gets to go fulfill his own ambitions. He spoke quite well of Eberechi Eze, to be fair, but it was just like a little bit cringe that Oliver Glasner had to come out with this kind of company line of, "He's called me and said he's not well," only for Steve Parish to then just confirm it anyway moments later. And then Glasner's obviously saying in the press conference afterwards that he's not going to play for us again, etc., etc. It just felt like a little bit of a farce when I don't think it needed to be. Everybody knows what's going on. I think a simple, Eberechi Eze's future is unclear at the moment. It's all a little bit up in the air. And so we've decided that it's best that he doesn't play tonight. I guess what Glasner wanted to do was put the kind of responsibility for Eberechi Eze not being available on him, and make it clear that, until a deal is complete, he was in his plans and he figured in his plans, and he wasn't going to drop him as a result of that or leave him out of the team. But I just think it became a little bit of a running joke that didn't really need to happen. And Eze turned up and he was having a little smile when he sort of was told, like, "Congratulations on your move to Arsenal," by a reporter. He kind of caught that, didn't he, as he walked past and all the rest of it. But yeah, Steve Stone, I think, is absolutely right here when he says, "My take is that Glasner was more annoyed with the board for the failure to replace outgoings." The Saxon says, "I think Glasner was more annoyed that they knew this would happen, but no replacement has been planned." Yeah, I completely agree with this, by the way. I've talked a lot about how he will feel like at the moment Crystal Palace's ambitions do not match his own. And I completely agree with that. I just felt like if I was Glasner, I would have walked into Steve Parish's office and said, "Boss, what is the line here?" Because, if you're going to come out and basically confirm it after me, or you're going to do that in whatever interview you give later on, I'm going to look pretty silly if I'm sitting there telling everybody that Eberechi Eze is unwell and has called me and told me he's unwell. So yeah, it's just a little bit of theatre that I don't think the Crystal Palace fans really kind of needed. So yeah, that's where we're at on Eberechi Eze. Hoping that we'll get some kind of announcement over the weekend. If not, because I'm sure Arsenal will want to do a great job of it. I mean, if he's not available to play against Leeds United anyway, then I don't really have an issue with them sort of waiting until Monday, Tuesday to do it. But I just feel like it would give everyone a massive lift at Emirates Stadium ahead of kickoff if he was to be kind of paraded out on the pitch in front of the fans. So we'll see. Lasse says, "Is he registered?" At the time of recording, at midday on Friday, the 22nd of August, I don't know that he is. So I'm not going to say that he is because I don't know that. I would be guessing. I'd be speculating. So yeah. Anyway, okay. Let's just make sure that I've wrapped up and covered all my points that I wanted to make on Eze. I've said I don't think he'll make Leeds. I've addressed Oliver Glasner's comments. And I've addressed the fact that the idea that he was going to play with all this going on in the background was just quite frankly ludicrous. And I can't believe that was even being peddled as a narrative in the build up to this. But anyway, let's move on. We'll take a really, really short pause. When we come back, we're going to talk Kai Havertz. And we're also going to start our preview of Arsenal versus Leeds United. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. That stuff really does help. As I mentioned yesterday, thank you so much for getting us to 45k here on YouTube. Thank you to everyone that listens on Apple or Spotify. Your support is very much appreciated. But now we want to begin that road to 50,000 on YouTube in particular. So let's try and get there ASAP. Probably take us the whole season, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, really appreciate the love and support. So make sure, if you haven't done so already, you're liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Short pause. When we come back, we're going to talk Kai Havertz.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. You are listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Simew, coming to you from a canteen in the news building, which is the home of Talk Sport and Virgin Radio and basically all the other media brands that are occupying this building. There's newspapers, there's TV channels, there's radio stations. I'm in the canteen. It's why it's a little bit noisy. So apologies for the bad sound. But anyway, let's move forward. Raphael Lim says, great show, Harry. Will you be at the press conference today? I'm not. This is the problem I have, right? So I work on TalkSport 2 every Friday afternoon. So if the press conferences on the Friday are scheduled for the morning, I'm able to get to them and get back in time to make it to work. But when they are scheduled for the afternoon, it's a problem for me. I think it's due at 1:30 today or something like that. And there's no way that I could have done that and got here in time for a 3 p.m. show. So I'm not at the press conference. I'm kind of waiting for that first sort of 9:30 a.m. one so that I can make sure I'm there. But it hasn't worked out for the first couple of games, which has been a little bit frustrating. Anyway, let's move on then to talk Kai Havertz. So what's the latest on his injury? Well, look, we don't have any real clarity at this moment in time with regards to what exactly the injury looks like. But there is a piece in Build in which they talk about the problem that Kai Havertz seems to have sustained. Let me just see if I can find a link to it on X. What they're saying is that he's got problems with cartilage and loose bodies in his knee. He'll now undergo 2 weeks of conservative therapy and injections. However, if it's not successful, surgery on the knee will be unavoidable. But let me be clear. That type of surgery to deal with cartilage or loose bodies, which is basically like bits in the knee that are not attached and are like all over the place and causing discomfort and mobility issues. That is not like ACL surgery. If he is to have that type of surgery, he'll probably be out for like 3 months, maybe 4 months, which is a much better outcome than the one I first feared when we heard this news. Like, if you think about the way this all unfolded, right? You get news of the Kai Havertz injury, you hear knee injury, the first thing your mind goes to is ACL, because we see them so commonly in the modern game. And then you're thinking, right, ACL means 9 to 10 months out, but Kai Havertz is a superhuman, so maybe he makes it in 8, best case scenario. And then you hear later that night that Arsenal have gone out and basically gone crazy and ended up signing Eberechi Eze and stealing him away from Tottenham Hotspur. And you kind of go, well, does that, as great as that is and as good and exciting as that is, does that kind of tell a story about the severity of Kai Havertz's injury? That was how I took it. That was how I read it. But thankfully, it sounds as if, and we are going to hopefully hear a bit more from Mikel Arteta, but later on in the day, it sounds like it isn't as severe as first feared. And I've got all my fingers and everything that I can possibly crossed at the moment, because he's a really important part of this squad and a really important player. And when we were talking about how we're in a better place and we're in a better position because of the depth that we've added, he's a big part of that bigger picture. So I want him to be back ASAP. I think Victor Gyökeres needs the support as well in that number 9 area. I think one of the things that really excited me about the Gyökeres signing, aside from what I think of him as a player and as an individual, is that, we've got somebody else there as well who is very effective and very good at what he does, meaning that there isn't an over-reliance on that one option like we had last season, and we're not going to get to the point where we end up with someone like Mikel Merino, with all due respect to him and the job that he did playing up front in a real crucial part and period of our season. So yeah, that's where we're at on Kai Havertz as per build, but hopefully we'll get something more from Mikel Arteta a little bit later on in the day on that. Just going into the chat, T Down Under suggests it will be a keyhole cleanup. It's interesting that they're going to try something else before surgery as well. I think that's really, really interesting, and it kind of suggests that maybe there is an optimism that actually this can be resolved without putting him under the knife. Sooty says, slightly off topic, but I'm curious why the medical teams don't advise players against the knee slide celebration, as this puts so much pressure on the ligaments and cartilage. It winds me up seeing it. You know what? I'd never thought of that, but I have gone on record as saying that I'm sick and tired of the knee slide thing, and it's boring and everybody does it. Think outside the box, for God's sakes. But anyway, let's begin our preview of the Leeds United game, and then we'll take some of your thoughts and questions from the live chat. So plenty still to come on today's episode of the pod. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all the rest of it. And you can check us out on Patreon, just like we did post Man United. We'll be bringing you some video analysis post Leeds. So now's a great time to sign up, because you get to go back and have a look at the one we did after the Man United game, and knowing that on Sunday your inbox will be populated with another bit of video analysis. So yeah, check it out. Patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. The link is in the description below. Really chuffed with how many of you have signed up over the course of the summer, and I promise you, as I've sort of hopefully demonstrated in the last week, that the video content is stepping up a notch, and the match-based content is stepping up a level. So go check it out. Now's a great time, and I appreciate all the love and support. Right, on to Leeds United, 5:30 p.m. kickoff at the Emirates Stadium. How do I feel about 5:30 kickoffs? I don't particularly like them, to be honest. I'd much rather this was a 3 p.m. game. But hey, it is what it is. Partly because with a 3 p.m. game, it's not late enough in the day to eat too much into the evening, but it's also early enough that I can leave the house quite early and avoid any requests from the Simiyu household, whether that's to be doing some kind of chore or anything else. I won't go into it, but you know what I'm saying. I just want my Saturdays to go and take in football, basically. Anyway, on the game itself, lots of people have been asking me on the Patreon chat and on various other platforms what I make of Leeds United this season. And honestly, I don't know right now. I was someone who felt that when it was discussed, and when I'm saying it, I'm talking about Daniel Farke's future. When it was discussed over the summer, there were some suggestions and hints, weren't there, that Leeds would consider changing the manager before the season started. Like, he'd done a wonderful job in the Championship, just like he did with Norwich. When he came up with Norwich, he didn't succeed. Okay, that's fair to say. I would accept that the circumstances at Norwich were very different, in that he certainly didn't get the backing that he's had at Leeds, and he probably wasn't starting from a stronger position in terms of the team he came up with versus the team that Leeds have come up with. So perhaps you'd argue that was harsh, but if you're Leeds United Football Club, I think you would have at least, been open-minded to it, depending on who became available. Obviously, they've decided to give Daniel Farke the opportunity to show what he can do in the top flight. He'll be more determined than anybody to prove everyone else wrong, because for how long, it's always been a discussion. Daniel Farke, great Championship manager. Premier League? Nah, not really. So I think for him, there's a real kind of fire in his belly to show everybody that they were wrong about him initially, and to prove everybody wrong. I did watch parts of their game against Everton. I have to say I wasn't fully concentrated on it, just because I was doing other things at the time. But from what I saw, they looked really good. They looked dominant. They looked controlling. They looked energetic. They looked physically better. than what I expected in terms of some of the profiles of players they've signed. They've signed some really big lads. I think they've recognised that, yes, you need to play good quality football. You need to be tactically very switched on to succeed in the Premier League, but you also need to be very, very physical. Feels like they added that to their kind of checklist when they were going out looking for players in the summer. And they've made some really, really interesting signings. But I guess the thing I'm struggling with is I can't quite tell how good Leeds were on Monday night versus how bad Everton were. And that's why I'm finding it really, really hard to kind of gauge their level at these early stages of the campaign. But look, regardless of how good Leeds are, or regardless of how better equipped they are for Premier League football than the last time they came up, or the last time Daniel Farke came up, the point is, we're Arsenal Football Club. We want to win the Premier League. We have to win home games against newly promoted sides. And that should be as far as that debate and discussion goes. Of course, you want the club to be assessing things and looking into them and trying to get a better understanding of what their strengths and weaknesses are. And if you can do that, you stand a much greater chance of being successful in the way that you want to. But I'm expecting Arsenal, A, to go out and win, but B, also to put on a show. You need to put on a show. People will push back on that and they'll say, well, no, you don't. You just need to pick up 3 points at this stage in the season. But for me, after the unconvincing display at Old Trafford, with a trip to Anfield coming up next weekend, for which we could do with a bit more confidence, I think you need to go out and you need to put on a show. You'd love Victor Gyökeres to get off the mark. You need Zubimendi to have a really dominant and controlling game, unlike the game that he had at Old Trafford, certainly in terms of possession anyway. These are the things that I'm looking for going into this game against Leeds United. Let's talk a little bit about the team that I'd like to see picked, because I'm sure there'll be some debate among us on this. Obviously, Raya is the number one goalkeeper. I'd continue with White at right back. I think he's had a strong pre-season, and although he got caught out defensively a few times at Old Trafford, I did feel that was because of the way that we were trying to play. It was kind of like play the ball into midfield and then jump out of position in order to try and create those transitional situations. Against Leeds, you're going to face a very, very different thing. But it would be White, Saliba, Gabriel and Calafiori across the back line for me. I know there'll be a lot of people out there saying that Miles Lewis-Skelly should play. I think Calafiori was so impactful at Old Trafford in an attacking sense that up against what I expect to be a low block, we could really, really do with him. Sort of, bombing up and down that left-hand side. And actually, the sort of the prioritization of attacking over sort of what he does defensively is something you can probably get away with in this game. Sooty has mentioned about White's injury. Yeah, White wasn't involved, I think, in some training the other day. I don't know exactly what the details are, and honestly, I've completely forgotten about the fact that he missed that training session. So thank you for reminding me. Timber coming in at right back is absolutely fine. I haven't got a problem with that. I actually think he's the better defender. I think we've seen that over the course of last season, that he's solid. I thought he was solid when he came on at Old Trafford as well. So in that case, back four, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel and Calafiori for me personally. In the midfield, Rice and Zubimendi. And I know this is probably a day where you could get away with playing with the 1-6 and the 2-8s, but I want to see them playing as a midfield pairing and partnership, because that's how I see our future at the moment. And I think in order for us to iron out the kinks in that relationship and to get it working in the best possible way, we need them to be practicing it. We need them to be becoming accustomed to it and adapting to it in in-game situations. So Rice and Zubimendi there. Odegaard, play him in that sort of 10 type role. He got a lot of heat last week, Martin Odegaard, and I thought most of it was unfair. He was receiving the ball, turning, carrying it into spaces. Did he always pick the right pass? Did he always execute that pass in the best possible way? No. We know that. But there were signs for me that Martin Odegaard is at least doing the right things. And if he continues to do the right things, I don't think it'll be long before we see the best version of Martin Odegaard again. He's got to start to develop that relationship further with Victor Gyökeres, which I think again only happens with game time. I don't think Martinelli was giving him much on the left-hand side in terms of options when we were breaking forward. And that's why I'd play Noni Madueke on the left-hand side from the start going into this game. On the right, Saka, absolutely. And through the middle, Victor Gyökeres, who I think is just, waiting to explode onto the Arsenal scene, really. So, yeah, that's my team. Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel Calafiori, Rice, Zubimendi with Odegaard just ahead of them in the midfield. I'd go Saka on the right. I'd go Madueke on the left, and I'd go with Victor Gyökeres up front. As I said to you guys, doing the pod in a public place today, which is an ideal, and I can imagine that you guys can tell, just like me, that the volume in here has gone up a notch or two. It is lunchtime. There's a bit of a rush. So what I'll do is I'll wrap up the pod pretty much there with my prediction for the game. So what do I want to see? As I've told you, A, the result, but B, I want to see us put on a show. I want to see us put on a performance that gives us all belief and confidence that this team is going to click and that this team is going to get it right going into this ever so important season of ours. In terms of a prediction, I'm going to predict goals. I think Arsenal are going to win it by 3-1. That's my prediction. That's my score prediction for this one. And yeah, let's put on a show. Let's get the job done. And we'll be back tomorrow, of course, with another episode of the pod. We'll pick up on what Mikel's had to say in his press conference, which is due to take place in just over an hour at the time of recording. And up to speed the latest as we always do in the pod. Don't forget to leave a like, to leave a video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Check us out on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review as well. And yeah, I will see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.